Hey, everybody, On the Run with Beards and Dunn is back. And we've got a guest, but before we get to our great guest, hey, Beards, how is your knee?
Well done. It's coming along slowly. I mean, slowly, but I got to remember it's only been 4 weeks since they put it in, and in fact, as soon as we're done recording, I got to go back to PT, and it's brutal because they work you hard, but um, that's what you got to do if you want to get this knee to function well, and you
Re-
know.
Remind us what, because maybe somebody's listening for the first time. What happened?
Yeah, so this is my third knee replacement. Back in August, my second one got a real bad infection in it. It got into my bloodstream and they had to take it out. I had to travel all the way to Sioux Falls, South Dakota from Bemidji because there's only a few doctors that can perform this kind of complex procedure. So they took it out. They filled the area with cement, embedded with antibiotics, sewed it back up. And for 2.5 months, I couldn't put any weight on it, couldn't bend it. And then on November 1st, they went in, took all the cement out, put in a brand new knee, and now I'm just rehabbing it, trying to get some strength back in the quad because that done. I did not use that leg, my left leg, for 3 months, so I lost all that muscle, and so but it's coming along. It's slow but sure. There's, like with anything, you have some better days when you think you're making big strides, and then the next day you kind of have you
So,
walk back a couple of steps, but overall, it's coming along, and I just got to be patient.
oh, I love your spirit, bud. And I'm just happy to hear things are heading in the right direction.
You
That's the key.
betcha.
That's the key. All right, I don't want to waste any time here.
I am so
We've got to
excited about our
Me too.
guest.
We've got a guest with us, and I was thinking how to introduce Bart Yasso is our guest today, and I've only met Bart once years ago at the Dick Beardsley Marathon Training Camp, and it's like you've known the guy your whole life after you meet him. But I was trying to kind of introduce him, and so I went online and I Googled adventurous person, and this popped up. It says this is a personality type. It says the adventurous personality type is also known as the ISPF personality type, which stands for introverted, sensing, feeling, and perceiving. People with this personality type are often described as action oriented. They are doers rather than dreamers and are driven by their instincts. Open minded, they approach life with a grounded warmth and are able to stay in the moment. Exploratory, they have an exploratory spirit and find joy in everyday life. Charming, they are relaxed, warm, and their live and let live attitude makes them likable and popular. Imaginative, they use creativity and insight to craft bold ideas. Passionate, they can be intensely feeling, and when they are caught up in something exciting, they can leave everything else behind. In the workplace, an ISFP seeks out positions that give them enough freedom to express their natural qualities. They're unlikely to be drawn into a button down environment with tightly held traditions and strictly enforced procedures. I thought, man, they should have a picture of Bart after
There
this
had to,
there.
there had to be a picture of Bart there next to that.
Well, and then the last thing I'm going to read, this is right off his website. It says Bart Yasso joined Runner's World magazine in 1987 to develop the groundbreaking Runner's World race sponsorship program, creating a vehicle for Runner's World to work with over 7,000 races, representing 4 million runners per year. And he's been inducted into the Running USA Hall of Champions. Bart Yasso also invented the Yasso 800s, and we're going to talk about that, a marathon training schedule used by thousands around the world. He was one of the few people to have completed races on all 7 continents, from Antarctic Marathon, oh my God, Antarctica Marathon, to the Mount Kilimanjaro Marathon. Oh my Lord. In 1987, Yasso won the U.S. National Biathlon Long Course Championship. He's won the Smoky Mountain Marathon in 1998. He's also completed Ironman triathlons 5 times. He also has completed the Badwater 146 through Death Valley. That's a story in itself.
Brutal.
And he's also cycled unsupported and by himself across the United States twice. And I tell you, Bart, that I read through this and I'm just shaking my head, going, I used to think I was kind of an adventurous guy, and I know Dick's always been kind of adventurous, but you put both
Not
of us
like that.
to shame. But I am so happy to have you on here. And Dick, what do you have to say?
Well, just Bart, we've known each other a long, long time, and back in the day, a lot of times myself and maybe Bill Rogers, Frank Shorter, Bart, and I would be invited to a race somewhere, and maybe we'd be signing books afterwards or something. And listen, Bart always had the longest lines. People just fell in love with Bart. He was like the common man's runner. He did so much for the running community to get out there, and it's just. And the only thing that has changed on the three of us is that our foreheads seem to be getting a lot bigger than they used to be.
Yeah.
Bart, welcome aboard, buddy.
Hey, thank you. This is the podcast for retreating hairlines.
That's
All
right.
three of us.
You bet.
But let me start out by saying, I remember Duel in the Sun, 1982. That was my first Boston. I remember it like it was yesterday, even though it was, as you know, many years ago.
Right.
But what sticks out to me was back then, people used to listen along the course. People listened to the radio, transistor radio by their ear, and
Yeah.
listened to the call of the marathon. And I remember I was about mile 21, and someone held up a sign that said Salazar first place, Beardsley second place, and then 208.51, 208.53. I'm like, there's no way these guys ran 208. It was hotter than blazes. The sun was intense. And at that point, that was the first time two runners were in 208 in the same race.
Right.
I thought there was a misprint for a couple seconds. Like a quarter mile later, there was another sign. That's what the spectators used to do for us runners.
Right.
Back, I was 3 zip codes behind Dick in that race. And Mike, when you were at the top of your game, I was 2 zip codes behind you. But I'll never forget that. And then watching that finish, after we finished and got back to our hotel rooms, of course, the finish was on TV nonstop
Right.
because it was such a battle right to the very end. And I swear to God, every time I watched that repeat, I thought you were going to win.
I still think that, Bart. Every time I see that video, I think maybe this time I'm going to beat him.
Yeah. And I tell the Today runner that runs Boston, they did that 600 meters on Boylston Street and get all that glory. We used to cross Boylston Street, as you know, just
Yeah.
run across it, actually veer to the right a little instead of
to Ring Road.
to Ring Road, which was the driveway to the pedestrian.
Yes.
And, when you're up by you got to escort it off. And, you didn't go through the parking deck like we had to. We were set by, you ended up you were underground in a parking lot. You're like,
Right.
finished the Boston Marathon and now I'm in a parking lot. They hand you to that too and say, get the heck out of here. There's steps over there. And they didn't want, there was only so much space in that parking lot that they had to give.
Exactly.
So Bart,
The good old days, man. We loved it.
You
Bart,
bet.
you've got such a great you're a great historian of running because you've seen a lot. But how did this all start for you? How did this
Yeah.
passion or this, I almost used the word addiction.
It was a stroke of luck. I was like 77. I was thought, I'm going to drink beer and smoke pot the rest of my life. And I realized that's not really what I wanted to do. So I used to see my neighbor run, and I said, this guy goes out for a run. He actually looks happy. I got to give this a try. And that's how I started. I remember running a mile thinking, God, a mile is a long way to run. And little did I know, 1 mile led to 2 to 3, running 2 times a week led to 5 times a week. And then I got my older brother, George, challenged me to this local 10K race. And then I was hooked. And then that was just took off from there. And then how I ended up in Runner's World was I say it's a stroke of luck.
I got to hear that story, Bart, because for as long as you were there, amazing.
Yeah, so Rodale is a company that's based in Bethlehem, near Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where I live now. And they purchased Runner's World in 1985. It was already a publishing company. They bought Runner's World magazine, and then started publishing it right in my backyard. And I got to meet Amby and Bob Wishnia and Vern Walther and all the people that worked there, and they liked me. George Hirsch.
Right.
But next thing I knew, I was working there, and then 31 years later, I retired. It's unbelievable. But the fact that Runner's World got purchased and ended up being published in basically my backyard.
So
Played
Bart, what was your first job, and when did you become kind of the ambassador of running for Runner's World magazine?
So it started, being right away when I started going to races, and they wanted me at the expo. They wanted really me to be the connective tissue between all the Runner's World products, the magazine, eventually the website, the books we were doing. They wanted me to be that connection between the running public and our product. So I had to go.
Gotcha.
People don't walk in the front door. You got to go out to the event. So that's what I started doing. And it's so funny. Everyone said, I told them I really enjoyed the travel. And they said, 5 years from now, you'll be begging us to take you off the road. That never happened.
No.
30, I traveled nonstop and loved it.
Oh, Bart, and I could tell anytime I would happen to be at an event when you and Runner's World were there, I could always see and tell the joy in your face, your voice. You would stay till the last person walked home to talk with people, and that was so endearing about you during that period of time.
Yeah, I always said I was fighting for the everyday runner. That's
Right.
And we had a lot of staffers that all they cared about was the elite runners. And I said, well, it is nice to, be friends with the elite runners, but the bulk of our readership, the bulk of our database is these people that just go out there and they're weekend warriors. They do their local race and then do like a Boston or New York or Grandma.
Absolutely.
Did I read that you had been at? I swear it was like 1,295 expos or some ridiculous number like that.
I believe that number. I would never have counted them up because I don't know how I was at, but I spent a lot of hours in that expo area.
Oh, how cool!
It was fun. I felt Runner's World was a good product for people, and I was willing to go to bat and do this, promote the products and represent the product. More importantly,
Oh.
and I had to run to back it up. So that's how
Well,
I ended up running all these races and traveling all over the place. And
well,
And Bart, so you're retired from Runner's World and whatnot, but I know you still get invited to a lot of events, and you still show up at a lot of running events around the country.
yeah, I do. I wouldn't say I show up at a lot these days, but there's some that are very special to me. The race directors are, passionate friends of mine, and we
You
stay.
bet.
And so there's some I still go to that I have a personal connection to, but I don't travel anything like I used to.
No, me neither.
So 31 years, I always said I loved it right to the bitter end. But then once I got away from traveling, I realized how arduous it is,
Right.
how much you miss, birthday parties of your niece and nephews, brothers, sisters. So, it's kind of nice now that I'm always there for every family function that goes on. What
You
my family
bet.
with me, they'd be gathered at Easter or whatever holiday around my parents' house back in the days years ago when I was traveling, and then they used to do a family photo, and they used to take a picture off the wall of me and some on the road somewhere. That's how I got all the family photos. I was literally a photo that one would hold.
Oh, that's
I
funny.
want to pay you a compliment, Bart. I'm helping volunteer coaching at a local university. A bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-old men and women. It is so much fun for me because I see them, I see myself 50 years ago. And so I think it's so exciting to be around young people like that. But and I've told Dick this. I mentioned I drop Dick's name a lot, because people when they go, "Oh, so you used to run?" I go, "Yeah, I used to run." And they go, "I go, have you ever heard of Dick Beardsley?" And boy, in the day, people's eyes would light up, and they go, "Well, of course." I go, "Well, he's my best friend." And they go, "What?" And I go, "Yeah, we went to college together. We stood up at each other's wedding. All at once now." I'm a quasi celebrity because I know Dick Beard. I'm a friend. I'm part of the entourage. Well, now I mentioned Dick. I hate to pop your bubble. But these young
No.
kids, I mentioned Dick Beardsley, and I'll go,
Who?
never heard of him. And I'll go,
Yeah,
and I send him to Duel in the Sun, that 9-minute clip on YouTube. I go, just go watch that. Just go watch
yeah.
that. And then I mentioned Shorter and Rogers, and a lot of them are like, I'm not sure. I was at practice the other night, knowing that we were going to have you on as a guest, and I went up to a couple of the gals. I go, "Hey, you ever heard of Yasso 800s?" They go, "Of course." And they go,
Wow.
"Yeah, it's I with this one gal said my track club I used to run with in high school and stuff. All those marathoners, it's all they ever talked about were Yasso 800s." And then so I go, well, guess who I'm going to get to visit with this week? The guy, Bart Yasso. And they kind of go, what? And they like, it's like Heimlich maneuver. Who the heck was Heimlich? He's the doctor who invented this life-saving technique.
Well, and Bart, as long as we're on that subject, how did you tell us
Exactly.
how you came up with the Yasso 800s?
First of all, Amby Burfoot named him after me.
Okay.
Of course, you guys know 1968 Boston Marathon champion, most prolific writer in running. I think the best writer in running. That guy's unbelievable.
Yeah.
He said, what I remember was, they weren't going to tell me they did this, but afterwards, after the magazine came out, 1993 was the story about Yasso 800. Amby named him after me because I had an unusual last name. And he said, your name is going to stick. People will remember Yasso. They're not going to know you. They're not going to know. They're going to remember the workout and remember Yasso. And dang, was he right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
eventually this thing came along called Yahoo. And eventually this thing came along like Google. And Amby said, your last name is like a Google or Yahoo. It's an unusual word and people remember it.
Right.
If I was Bart Smith, it would have never happened. And but he said that was it. But it was a workout that I did, local track, Lehigh University's track, about 2 miles from where I'm sitting right now. And it was just, 10 times 800, 400 recovery. If you want to run 240, you bang out these 800s, 2 minutes, 40 seconds, that correlation. And, Amby, when I told him about it, he kind of looked at me kind of strange, but then he really got thinking about it. He said the biggest problem we would have with doing workouts in the magazine is people didn't understand the workout.
Yeah.
3-mile warm up, 4 times 200, and then 3 1200s, and then follow out with some 200s and 400. People would go like, what? Warm up, 10 times 800, 400 recovery. If you want to run a 4-hour marathon, do them in 4 minutes.
Yeah.
It can't get any simpler to explain. And that was the other endearing thing about them. But then I always tell people, don't ever have a workout named after you unless you want to hear about it every day for the rest of your life, because that's what happens.
Oh.
And occasionally I'll get some, someone started a thread and they're bashing Yasso 800s. They don't work. It's usually coaches that get paid.
Yeah. Right.
They don't want that. They don't want that out there. So they bash it and say this doesn't work. And then someone sends me a link, says, you got to get on here. They're bashing 800s. I said, I don't have to get on there. I've only ever said it worked for me. I never said it would work for anyone else. When I talked to Amby about it, I said, it really does work for me. And I said, I don't know if it'll work for the general public, but Amby did his due diligence and said, I think it will. We're going to go with it. So that was it, 1993, and there's literally not a day in my life where I don't receive at least 2 messages about Yasso 800s.
Well,
Bart, and they do. Yeah.
Dick and
They
I
do.
look
Listen.
back. Yeah.
Well, and Mike and I were talking the other day when we were getting ready to, do an interview with you. And so back, after I retired from that high level of training, then when I got into my 40s and 50s, I kind of got, in the masters and stuff. So I started doing the Yasso 800s, and honest, they were like spot on. I could run in the 240s. And so I would do my Yasso 800s, 240 to 245. And if I did those religiously in my buildup, every single time I was in that range at the finish of my marathon. So it worked for me, believe me.
And same here. Yeah, I look back in my diary, and back in my prime, I could run my 220, 222 on those 800s. That we didn't call them Yasso 800s. We were just doing 800s in training, and it wasn't necessarily 10 of them. I might have done 2 or 3 1-mile repeats, then finished with 4 to 6 800s. And I'd look, and I'm nailing them in 220, 221, 222, and I'd go run it. I'm not making this sound easy. 220, and I didn't know anything. I didn't click in my head at all. But when they came out in 93 or thereabouts, it might have been when you were at the camp, I started looking back, and I was watching some of Dick's workouts back with Dean Matthews in the day in Atlanta, and they'd go to the track occasionally, and I saw them knocking out those 210s, 212 800s. And guess what? Dick runs 212 at London, 209 at Grandma's. I mean, and all at once, it's like the light bulb lit up above my head. And I go, these do. And again, it's potential. And I think you're quick to say, hey, it worked for me. I'm not going to say it works for everybody, and they're not 100% guarantee this will work.
No,
No, but it
not based
yeah,
on science, and it is just a correlation that works for a lot of people. And the other thing is you got to take into consideration it doesn't work if you're running the Pikes Peak Marathon, brutal course, or
yeah,
some
weather. Yeah.
day where you get bad weather. You got to make the.
Well,
But if,
plus I don't think you could just do 800s and then not do your long run on the weekend and things like that. Yeah, so.
that's what occasionally I get some messages and people did two of them and run that time. No, no, I did 800. Time I did the workout, I did 10
Hmm,
or two. But I tell people like if you've never been to a track, you want to start doing two of them and build up to 10.
10, yeah.
Right.
But back in the old days, people were really track runners. Speed workout was just part of the regime, and there's a lot of runners now that don't do any speed workout. The
No.
change, and there's nothing against that. That's what you got to do what you want to do and what keeps you in the game.
Yeah.
In the old days, track workouts were hill workouts, track workouts, tempo, fartlek,
Yeah, all
and
that.
of course the long run has never changed. The
No.
Well, Bart,
marathoning, half
tell us,
marathon, long run.
you've got so many adventures. I was amazed when I looked at your site and it has a photo of you at the base camp of Mount Everest. And I thought, I
Yeah,
did not know you'd been there. And when I saw that, I started laughing to myself, like, what? Mount Kilimanjaro, I'd heard about that one.
yeah.
How, these adventures you've been on, Antarctica Marathon. I mean,
Yeah.
were they quasi work related in many cases?
I think I always had this in me. My family, we summer vacation, we always went to the beach, and I would always say, "I'm going to go to the mountains," and they were like, "You're 12 years old. You're not going to the mountains." So, but I would say that my family would say, you know, "Don't worry about him. We'll put him in the back of the car. He can sit in the back. He'll go on vacation with us." But I think I always had that, and then when I was financially could travel the world and go in the races wherever they were held all over the world. And I got to see the world. But Everest, my favorite part about Everest Base Camp is when you leave Namche Bazaar, which is the Sherpa town at about 10,000 feet, and head up towards base camp. There are no paved roads. Everything back when I was there in the 90s was still done by foot. If there's heavy stuff to really move, they use yaks, and someone had to walk next to the yak.
Wow.
But I love that there's just nothing. There's no roads. It's
Yeah.
just everything done. I love it. These young kids. I remember this young kid. He was carrying this big. They broke up a big disc radio that they were going to take, like a microwave, and then they cut up in pieces, and each had to take a piece to get up to the top, up to base camp. I was keeping up with these kids, and I thought, kids are like 12 years old. This thing is 80 pounds. How could they do this? The people were so fit, but when you think about it, they do everything on foot.
Right.
So I wanted to do a lot of running when I got up to the high elevation. So I had a porter, and I was with a friend from Alaska, my buddy Mike. But the altitude really hit him. He had to stay lower, and I went up to base camp to do some running on some of the high trails up there. And I had a porter and a guide, which is really helpful because they know where you can go and where you shouldn't
Yeah.
go. They were very helpful. So these guys knew I wanted to do some running at high elevation, and they really helped me out.
Now, how high was base camp?
Base camp's right around 18.
Oh
And
my goodness.
18,000 feet.
18.5, 18.8 to go over to Chola Pass and Gokiori and Kalapatar, the name of these places I've run to. It was just
Now,
awesome.
Bart,
But
I've heard just walking.
I
A
was,
lot of these people walk 5, 6, 7 paces, stop, get your
yeah,
back, walk 5.
I was lucky. I could always run at altitude for some reason. Pikes Peak Marathon, I was able to run it, when you get to 14 and hit the turnaround. I actually ran at 20,000 feet on Aconcagua, which is the highest mountain in the Americas. I didn't know when I got to this Camp Berlin, just a little bit below 20,000 feet. I was a little ahead of schedule, and I was like, wow, today's my birthday. I turned 40. And I said, I got to go for a run. And I was at 20,000 feet, and there's this little flat area, a little plateau called Camp Berlin, where a lot of people stay before you summit. And I started running around the flat area. People thought I was showing off. They were in their tent dying of altitude. No, and I said, no, 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 it's my birthday. I want to do a little run. I think I ran like 20 minutes without stopping to
Oh
see
my
him.
gosh.
Hopefully made it a mile. I mean, you don't know.
No.
I didn't have technology we have today. This was years ago. But I don't know. I just always had that part to me to travel and go to these crazy places. And always, like, you go to Kathmandu, it's the craziest town. But I fall in love with that stuff. I don't know what it is, but it's
Well, cheap.
in my
Yeah.
still in there. Although I don't do the travel like I used to. It's not.
Well,
I gotta really chill out these
you've
days.
written a book, and I don't. It's still in print. I hope. I'm hoping people can get their hands on it. Can if they? It's called My Life on the Run. Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
my life on the run is still out there.
I
And
think
then
it's
I
yeah. It's awesome.
my last project at Runner's World before I retired, I finished a book called Race Everything because they said I raced every distance and every race. And then I have a new book coming out in April, which the publisher is National Geographic.
Oh,
Wow.
cool.
Yeah, I got a call from National Geographic. I was like floored, and and they had this idea to do this run called or book called 100 Runs of a Lifetime. And it's not 100 runs of my lifetime, it's 100 runs of a lifetime. So it's,
Yeah.
everyone can do their 100 runs.
Hmm.
So there's actually a couple runs in the book couple races that I'd never run.
Hmm.
Uh, I would say 92% of the book, I have done the race or the run. But there's a couple that I always wanted to do and never got to do. So
Wow.
hopefully, when this book comes out in April, that'll spur me on to do those couple that I haven't done.
Yeah, and maybe you'll get invited to those runs, Bart. You never
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean, you can't get a bigger publisher than National Geographic.
No.
I went on. I ran on their Instagram right away because they're going to promote it on Instagram. They have 280 million followers.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. That's
I said, okay, I think they're going to sell a fair amount of books.
Absolutely.
Bart, how fit? I bicycle now, and I should get the jersey, the old broken down runners bicycle club, because there's a whole bunch of us out there that bike now. And Dick, bless Dick's heart, that dude's never quit. He still runs, even with
Yep.
artificial knees and all that. How about yourself? What's your
Yeah, I'm
training?
still there doing 3, 4. Every once in a while, I get up to 6 miles, which is a long run for me. And I tend to run on the rail trail that we have. It's pretty flat and soft surface. I used to love the hills and the single track trails, but I really chill out a little more than those days are kind of behind me. So I go out there. I'm part of a very exclusive running club. I've never passed a runner when I'm out there running ever. So I always say I'm the only runner that hits the rail trail, and I do pass about 20 people, but they're running towards me.
That's Bart. That's what I tell people. I go, I run every day, but I said, if I ran any slower, I'd be going backwards, but I
Yeah,
still love doing it.
yeah. I literally pass nobody. Include some walkers, dog walkers, moms pushing babies. I go out there, do 15-minute miles, and
Yes.
I'm happy. People always say, like,
Me
why do you
too.
run when you go that slow? I said, because I enjoy it.
Yes, me too.
And I really don't, I'd only go a couple days a week and I just have fun with it. Now I used to cycle a lot and used to do Ironman and do all that stuff. So the bike is very familiar with me, but I fear on the bike. I rode across the United States twice, solo,
Right.
unassisted, me. I had a calling card, a credit card, and a stash of money, and my bicycle, obviously. And I was never afraid. I had more people stopping to offer me money and to place to sleep and did I need anything. I must have really looked bedraggled when you're out there. Why would there somebody know that I was going cross country and that I needed?
Right.
But I used to tell them, like, I got everything I need. Thanks for stopping. But I would ask them their name and where they're from and hear all these stories. It's to go across the United States on a bike, just cruising 17 miles an hour. You really, really physically experience the makeup of this country. Not only
Yeah.
feel the geographic when you're, especially the northern, because the northern route, like basically Seattle, New York City, you hit a lot of mountain ranges. It's unbelievable. But it's more the culture and the people.
Yeah.
An example, like you go from Wyoming into South Dakota.
Mhm.
There's no river you cross. There's just a sign that says, leaving Wyoming, welcome to South Dakota. And when I was in Wyoming, everybody was a cowboy boots, spurs, the whole 9 yards. Going to South Dakota, everyone was Native American.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like literally they said, no, you go that way and you go that way. Like it was really a divide. Now I could see it if there was like a big mountain range or a river 2 mile wide and say, okay, well, we're going to stay on this side of the river.
Yeah.
But there really is this divide. It's astonishing, and you really get to feel it and experience it when you're on a bike. If you're on Route 80 or Route 70 or whatever, you don't get to experience it.
No.
But cruising along, and I had to stop in all these mom and pop stores to get drinks and food to keep going. And people is amazing to see the difference as I went along. I remember I was in Wyoming. The only stretch where I ran out of fluids. I saw these little towns on the map, but I didn't know that no one lived in these little towns. So I left Sheridan and I was heading east. And Sheridan's a big town in Wyoming by Wyoming standards.
Right.
And there was like 80, 90 miles. There was nothing. And then I came to a town called Moorcroft. And I remember on the outskirts of town, there was this little there was a little airport there and there was a little mom and pop store. I told the guy, man, I need some Gatorade. He goes, dude, you look terrible. What's wrong? And I said, well, I did about 80 miles without any fluid, and it's like 90 degrees out there. Once I get some Gatorades in me and some snacks, I'll be fine. So the guy says, here, grab what you want, go in the back room. It's air conditioned, and the rest of the store wasn't air conditioned. So I go in the back room. He's got his books there. He's got all his money there, his stacks of. He's over here. He's doing his books, and he didn't care. He closed the door. He said, just eat and drink, and then we'll worry. We'll pay. You can pay later. Don't worry about it. He said, you don't even have to pay if you don't want to. He found out.
Wow.
That's
So
awesome.
he comes back to check on me, and now I'm coming to life. And, I got 70 miles to go that day. But I said, all your money's back here and everything. He said, buddy, there's no way you rode your bike that long to steal my money. I knew it was safe, but it was such a cool experience because then I gave the guy like $40 and walked out the door. But I'll
Oh,
never
neat.
forget how nice people were to me, and literally like I'd be on this service road, the highway's over here. I'm on the service road with no cars and just cruising along, and people would see me and they would zip ahead and get out of their car and they would stop me and say, man, where are you going? I know you're going cross country. I said, yes, I started here and, finishing here. And they would and they would always say to me, do you need money? Do you need help? And
Wow.
I'm good. Bike's working. I'm working. Everything's fine. I just got to do.
How long did that take you, Bart, to go across country on your bike?
I did 165 miles a day for 20 days.
Oh my gosh.
Nice.
And I packs on the back of my bike, which is not fun. 165 a day back then would be easy if I didn't have those packs because I was pretty fit. But it took me 20 days. I did it in 1992 and 1994.
Which year was harder? Was there a year that was tougher than the other one?
First year, because the first year I was on a lot of roads I've never been on. And I was, the maps I had didn't really show elevation and what kind of climbs I would be hitting. But I found out there's some serious climbs out there. But I was always good on hills, so it worked to my benefit. But what I did, so when I went in 94 the second time, if I got to a road like Cody, Wyoming, there was 16A, which is the old road, and 16, which is the newer road. If I took the new road last time, I took the old road this time.
Gotcha.
Yellowstone, there's a northern loop and a southern loop, so I did the opposite, so I did get to see more stuff. So it was worth doing it again. But man, it is. But Mike, you do a fair amount of cycling. When I tell people I got 165 a day, I explain something that's like 60 miles away, and I said you got to do it once, twice, 3 times. And they go, oh yeah, I could do that. And then I said, oh, then you got to do it 20 days straight.
Exactly.
Right.
There's no off days. The thing I did was the smartest thing I did, and I don't consider myself to be the smartest person out there, but I paid for 19 hotel rooms in advance. So I always knew I had to get to that hotel.
Nice.
And that was the thing that saved me, because I wouldn't have made it in 20 days if I didn't do that. Because I
Good
would,
incentive.
Yeah.
yeah, you could be like 130 miles into the day, and then you look over and you see a nice hotel, motel, and it says vacancy, and there's a swimming pool. There's a floaty in the swimming pool, and he's smiling, and you're out there pedaling your butt off in 95-degree afternoon. You go like, wow, I could be that guy if I turn right here. But I knew I had to get to Rapid City or wherever I was
Right.
going.
That's a great
And I do
idea.
remember that once I got to Minnesota, I was in a different state every night. Now that didn't happen in Wyoming and Montana and Washington. They're big states to cross east to west. But once I got into, I was in Worthington, Minnesota, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
Yeah.
the state. And then it was Iowa, and it just kept, every day was a new state. The last 11 days, so that then I really felt like I was making
Oh,
progress.
I bet it did.
Doing the same mileage, just going to a different state, just had that feeling of wow. But it is so cool. It's just it's hard to put in the words how much fun it is. And somebody passed it on to me. There was a local cyclist, Lenny Breland. He passed away a bunch of years ago, but he was a good friend, and he was the one that I think he had the record for going cross country for 50-year-olds at the time.
Hmm.
He used to tell me he remembered every town he went through and all that. I said, "How do you do this?" And I always said to him, "I got to do it someday." And he
Wow.
said, "I hope you do."
Good for
And
you.
Yeah.
so when I did it, he's the guy I thought of the whole time. And you do remember these little towns.
Good.
I do remember, mention that Sheridan, Wyoming. I came down this long downhill, so you climb the peak and out of Cody, and then drop into Sheridan. And so when I got up to 10,000 feet at the top of the peak, I put on some warmer clothes that I had, and then cruised down in the Sheridan. It was warm, so I started taking off a couple layers, pulled over, and there were some kids hanging out, and they're in like a park, and they're smoking pot. They don't think I know what pot is or would know the smell of pot, so I'm like, "What are you guys doing?" And they said, "What are you doing, buddy?" I said, "I'm riding my bicycle across the United States." They were like, "Dude, they have airplanes these days." I said, "I'm well aware of airplanes." I said, "You guys keep smoking that pot," and they couldn't believe that I
Yeah.
knew that they were smoking pot. But stuff like that happens throughout
Yeah.
the whole journey.
Before we get too late, because there's so many. I know your book is full of so many great stories. And I know,
Oh,
and
great book.
the one I told you I was going to bring it up is how in the heck, and I think it was a Runner's World thing or something. You ended up going to a nudist colony because they had a race. Is this
I
true?
love this
Yeah,
story.
the Bear Buns Fun Run. It was the big
Bear buns. Okay.
bear bun races back in the '90s. But I was smart. I went to a naked race that was 3,000 miles from my hometown. Because the worst thing you want to do is to go to a local one like that and then see your next door neighbor. You see your neighbor every day, and the image you have of your neighbor is
Right.
the Bear Buns Run, not from the front yard, waving at him or him or her every day. So I was lucky I picked one far away, but I didn't know they would ask me to speak at a dinner the night before and all naked at the dinner, and I'll get behind this podium and I'll do my speech normally 20 minutes. I'll do it in like 10 minutes and I'm out of there. I had no podium. They had me put my computer on cinder blocks out of the parking lot. And then I was like, oh my God. And in the race, everyone asked me at Runner's World, what are you going to do in the race? I said, I don't know. Are people going to run fast in this race? Or are just going I don't know. And there were two guys in front of me, two younger guys. I do remember it was out and back. And I thought, okay. And the race director at the start, he was like, hey, everybody, we're going to introduce Bart Yasso. I said, dude, start the race. No introductions.
Yeah.
It's race morning. So he did start the race. It was just out and back inside the confines of the nudist camp, out to this turnaround and
How
back.
many runners are we talking about, Bart?
Oh, there were probably 300.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a big race because it is the Super Bowl of all these nudist races. So the turnaround guy had on a vest, a glowing orange vest, so we knew he was a volunteer, but he didn't have any pants on. So you ran pants, and that guy's probably 10 years younger than me these days, but he seemed like an old guy back then. You run out to the old guy with no pants, turn around, and come back. So there were these two guys in front of me, and I thought, okay. I'm feeling pretty good. I got to get serious about this thing. And then what I forgot was after the turnaround, there's like 350 naked people running towards you as you go, as I'm heading back. I forgot about those kids. Completely forgot I was in a race, forgot about those kids. I was
Oh, I'm
just,
crying. I'm crying right
Me
now. I'm
too.
laughing so hard.
but I always tell people the only thing the race director really set me up and took advantage of me while I was there. And I always said to him, just don't give me any award that says I was smallest in my age group or something. I'm drawing the line there. That's it. You can make fun of me or ask me to stop, but my
Oh,
I drew.
You did?
No,
Did you win the race?
no, those two. Yeah, I never caught up with those two young guys. I think I could have if I would have really, thought about it. But once I turned and the sights you see running at you,
Now,
kind of lose focus.
was in your book? You have a photo of you finishing, though, don't you?
Yeah. This guy came up on me at the end, and I had to out sprint him. And that's the photo. It's a photo from the side they took. They don't really allow cameras, but the race director takes. He's in charge. He can do what he wants, but
so
he
Bart, I
knows how
got.
to stage himself that he can get a photo that he can actually use.
So I
But
gotta ask, when you're butt naked like that, is anything a little sore afterwards? Because it's not tucked in there tight.
I wouldn't want to do a half marathon. I got to say, 5K you can survive it. There's a reason why almost all of them are 5K. So
Right.
yeah,
Oh, mercy.
enough information.
Okay. Is that the weirdest thing, or is there any other? I want you to try to top that story.
It was, yeah, one of the more stranger races I could have done. There's no doubt about it. Now there are these people that go to these nudist camps all the time. They're members of the groups, and so. But we would stick out like a sore thumb because they were tan head to toe.
Right.
Non-professional nudists like myself had white spots.
Oh.
The ones that had white butts were definitely amateurs in there.
Now, we're going to run out of time, but I know you shared something about the Marine Corps Marathon. You got to speak there to a bunch of generals and what have you.
Dick, did you ever speak at Marine Corps?
I did one time, Bart, back in probably sometime in the 90s, I think.
Yeah, because that turned into such a big race, and I remember speaking in the basement of this ballroom at a Hyatt, and there were 1,300 people in this room, and they sent me at the head table. I actually spoke there twice. They sent me at the head table, and you're with like three generals.
Right.
Two of the generals were 3-star generals. Those guys are pretty serious.
Oh, yeah.
So I had this idea of telling this story. I thought, wow, man, I don't know how it'll go over with these guys, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to start my talk with that and then go into my rest of my presentation. So, and I said, you know what? The generals are going to hate me. They're going to hate me. Maybe they'll like it. I'm not sure. But so the story was I was at the Tacoma Marathon, Tacoma, Washington. This was about 10 years ago. I was just there to speak. I wasn't going to run the race. I was really sick at the time with Lyme disease, and I wasn't running at all. And I had all this antibiotics I had to take.
Right.
But I met this guy. He was stage 4 cancer, and he came up to me and he said, "You are my inspiration. I read your book. I laugh. I cry. It really helps me." And he said, "I want to run with you tomorrow." And I'm like, "Dude, oh my god!" So I got a hold of the race director right away. I said, "You got to give me a number in your race because I got to run with this guy.
Yeah.
Guy's battling stage 4 cancer. No matter how long I'm out there, I'm gonna try to finish, and I'll run with this guy for a while." So I ran with him for a while. He came along. His wife took a picture of us somewhere along the course. She was out there, and it was just nice to be around the guy.
Hmm.
But then I got to coming out of this pretty park, Defiance Park, I believe it is called. And then we're getting close to 20 miles, and I'm dying in this race. I'm thinking, how am I going to get to the finish? So anyway, the day before the race, we did a little shakeout run, and then we went for coffee. Pretty easy to do when you're in Seattle, Tacoma area.
Right.
Up every 100 feet. So we're having coffee, and the woman that was sitting right next to me, everyone's telling stories, and I was running with her, and she told me she was a flight attendant. So I said, okay, I'm gonna, you can tell me I'm an idiot and don't answer this question, but I gotta ask because I've never around flight attendants like in a situation like I'm always around them in a plane where I've never asked this question, but I asked her. I said, "Did you ever witness someone trying to be a member of the Mile High Club on your flight?" Oh yeah, she had like 3 stories. They were really funny. So anyway, I when she told these stories, I said, "You are my favorite flight attendant." That's exactly what I said to her. So the next, so we're in the marathon in mile 20, and when you come out of this park, I guess they needed mileage. You go out and back in this one section. There's a little pretty road, tree lined, median strip, and everything. It's really pretty, and it's a neighborhood. So we're going up, and it just happened that I'm heading this way. She's in front of me, heading this way. And what does she do? She's yelling, "Bart, Bart!" And I'm looking, and I'm half blind. I don't know who she is, and she says, "It's your favorite flight attendant, the Mile High Club." That's all she said. And I'm like, "Oh, I was so happy now I know who it is." And I didn't even know her name, but I yelled, "Keep going strong, you look great." But I did notice when I was running, the people around me, there was like complete silence. I wasn't making this connection, but I was laughing to myself what she said and everything. And it took like about a minute, and all of a sudden, one of the runners, a guy says, "You the man." And then it dawned on me what was happening. These guys, all the runners around me, thought I was a member of my nightclub. I had to tell them. I was saying, "Look, it even know that woman's name. I've never been on an airplane with her on Mile High Club." I tried to explain what happened yesterday. They didn't believe me. So, God, I was hurting so bad at mile 20, and it took like till mile 24 till I finally convinced people I never been with this woman. And finally they believed me. And then I said, "Oh, we only got like 2 more miles to go." I said, "It couldn't have happened if that happened at mile 2, it wouldn't have been as fun and as funny, but
No.
convinced." And then I did
Oh.
see her after I finished and told her, I said, "Do you know what happened when you said, 'Hey, it's your favorite flight attendant at Mile High Club'?" I said, "All the around me thought that we were buddy." I'm like,
Oh,
That is
Bart,
awesome.
Bart,
was,
listen. Well, we're running out of time here, but we're gonna have to have you on again because you've got this is just a couple of stories, and we can't thank you enough. We want to thank everybody for listening, and if you have any questions for Dunn or myself, comments about the show, you can contact us directly at our website at beardsanddunpod.com, or you can leave us a comment on our Facebook, Instagram, or X, all at Beards and Dunn Pod. And Bart, we've interviewed a lot of neat people over the last year and a half or so, but I tell you, this has been fun, and we got to do it again, buddy.
I'll do it again. I said when you guys invited me, and I knew Mike and you, Dick, that these guys do it for the right reasons. It's not about ego, not about money.
No.
You are doing this for the love of our sport, and I thank you for that.
Oh, thank you,
Wow.
Bart. Bart, have a great day. Beards, have a great day, and
All
I
right.
can't wait to do it again.
Take care, guys. Bye bye.